everything is bright and shiny, to 10, oh, this is terrible, I'm moving to Mars. Where do you stand in terms of how scared you are with the ethical concerns of AI? So if you can.
Okay. I guess I picked the wrong spot because I have to start every time.
All right. We'll mix it up.
Yeah, we'll mix it up.
My name is Yukun Zhang, and I work for ATB. I started to lead the AI governance work at ATB about 7 years ago. And I was lucky enough to see the exponential growth in the area of ethical AI. And I'm very happy that today we are having this discussion in Calgary. To rate the feeling about ethical AI, if pre-ChatGPT, pre-Gen AI world, I would say 3 to 4, because I feel like a lot of risk can still be contained, and there are a lot of things that we are aware of, and you know what you're doing. And it grows so much after ChatGPT or Gen AI or LM became available. I would say 6 at this moment, giving me some room to increase it as we see more AI applications coming in. Yeah, 6 for me right now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Keri.
Oh, well, now I don't know what I'm going to say. I was going to say 6, but I'm kind of between a 6 or a 7. The organization I work for is BlueMarvel AI. So we work in the space of industrial automation. And so the use cases and where we're applying artificial intelligence and machine learning is really around things like reliability, preventative maintenance, energy usage and consumption. It's like in those spaces I feel really optimistic, and I think artificial intelligence and machine learning can really like provide improvements. The use cases that scare me a little bit are around things like human resources. Things like financing for banks, anything that kind of revolves around identifying a human population with either being seen or unseen by the AI. Those are the ones that scare me the most, I would say.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren.
Hi, I am Dr. Dwyer. I was about to say I'm academic chair at SAIT, but I am no longer an academic chair at SAIT, where I was developing the artificial intelligence program. I'm now an assistant professor with Mount Royal University in our information design program. My background with AI falls strictly within this responsible and ethical space. So as a program coordinator for the Responsible AI NSERC grant across Canada, I worked with a bunch of researchers in this field for a few years, basically doing the work on trying to develop at least an ethical framework within Canada, where we're still figuring out where that governance lands. Much of my research also falls in the realm of social robotics. So robots, AI, different things, but often intersect. In terms of concern, my concern with artificial intelligence is at 0. My concern with people is around 10.
There you go. Yes,
and
that's right.
Realistically speaking, AI is nothing but a tool.
That's right.
A pencil is a tool.
That's right.
AI is a tool, right? So it's really just who's holding it and what they will do with it. That's what concerns me. The tool itself, whatever, a pencil is a pencil. It's not really going to do much. But when you put it in the hands of the wrong person with the right amount of power and the ability to sign laws, then, well, we have something more challenging.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Moamen?
I am Moamen. I am a lead machine learning engineer at RBC, Royal Bank of Canada. Basically working on analytics and NLP products for RBC. I'm working here in the Calgary Innovation Lab. Most my day-to-day work is around building the chatbots and AI virtual assistant for future in RBC, and also working on data analytics real time. So my concerns, because I have been working in this field for now 14 years, I still believe, as Dr. Lawrence said, it's the tool, right? It's the concern about the people and how to use it. There is a lot of stuff concerning me, but if you look last week, the events go very fast. You have Devon, that is an AI software engineer that can solve GitHub issues. Now, Elon Musk open sourced Grok, which is a good thing, but there is a very fast, continuous events happen open sourcing the models. So yes, the concerns about people, that's concerned me much. And also about not governing these algorithms and put the right regulations about them. Because you can use this in the right way that can benefit humanity a lot, and this you can use it the wrong way. So yeah, I have the similar concern.
I'm Graham Doerksen. I'm a software engineer and developer with Attabotics, which is a robotics company in town. We mostly use machine learning AI for like path planning or preventative maintenance, those kinds of activities. I'm also a community organizer with PyData in town and the YYC Data Society, which is why I'm here, in fact. And yeah, I would say I was going to go similar, like 6 on the risk scale. Like when we think about, like we talk about like a pencil as a tool, it is true AI is a tool, but AI is a tool that can potentially make more of itself, depending how you contain it or don't contain it. So it has a different, I think, threat vector than potentially, like nukes don't make more nukes, but AI could maybe make more AI. So things like that. But we're probably not quite moving to the Mars yet because the Starship 3 test, they didn't land it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see.
So we'll have to deal with it
We
right
might be
here.
stuck here
on
for a
air.
while.
Might be stuck here.
We might be
Yeah.
stuck
we're
here.
going to be stuck here for a bit.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So let's start with some of the concerns. So to clarify, the concerns that we will go through are just a few among many. So we try to think as a group of what would be the more immediate, or what we think we have more to talk about when we discuss in this panel. So it's not a representative list of risks with AI by any means, but we have tried to think about what is possible. So the first one that, like everybody agreed about, is a bias in terms of these AIs, especially with generative AIs being trained on available text that has text and other sort of media that was available. This can create the concern of introducing certain level of bias in terms of what it produces. So it's kind of like what goes in determines what comes out, right? So can you explain how concerned you are with this, like, or what is your key concern about that? And then is there any specific example that you can give us about a case of bias that has happened? And also, if you can then go a little bit further about your own organization, like how do you handle that? Like how do you handle cases like that? Like I don't want to put you on the spot every time, so Keri, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I mean, like I was kind of sharing at the opening, like our business in terms of the use cases that we're looking at, I mean, we're using machine learning and like time series predictions to make better decisions around things like energy usage, equipment maintenance, those types of things. And so when I think about my level of concern that those potentially have, from that standpoint, I really actually see it more as an opportunity. And I think having a human in the loop and making it more of a suggestion, like here, like solidifying it down, making a suggestion, having a human in the loop to then still make the ultimate decision, I think is probably the most important way that we're managing it. So we're never going to have, the AI deciding what's going to be done in an actual facility. That's why we have engineers and that's why we have operators. But the AI can certainly make it a little bit easier to kind of hone in on where they should be focusing their effort, or where the lowest hanging fruit is for them to be focusing in and making their jobs a little bit quicker, a little bit easier, so that they can focus in on the higher level activities in that way. So I think in that regard, I'm very optimistic.
Okay.
When I think about bias specifically in AI, I'm not necessarily thinking about the AI's bias, but rather the biases of the people who are cleaning the data, setting it up, doing all these pieces basically that feed into what the AI will then do. And we see this in a bunch of different places, but like some of the biggest cases of bias in AI would be, for example, easy to access for you folks if everyone has Netflix, Coded Bias, if you've seen it, as a fantastic documentary. Some of the researchers out of MIT were looking at facial recognition technology, being like, okay, can we do facial recognition using AI and using computer vision? And found out that it really only reliably worked on white male faces. and then didn't really reliably work on white female faces, and then definitely did not really reliably work on black male faces. And the darker skinned and the more feminine the face became, the more biased and the more likely it was to just mix people up with other people, which can be really massively problematic when it's being used by police forces. So we see that like this bias has a massive consequence. On a smaller note, raise your hands here if you've used ChatGPT. Great. If you all put in the same prompt right now, do you think you'll all get the same answer? No. No, in the same way that if you all put something into Google together, you would not get the same answers. Or if you all pull out your social media and you look at what icons you have on the bottom of Instagram, they're not all going to be the same, because things are customized to you to keep you using things longer, right? And that's a big part of how a lot of these systems in web development would work. That's where your own bias can get perpetuated. So if you're using these tools, so if you're using ChatGPT and you're saying, write me this answer, you're just going to get a lot of what you look at sent back to you because you're more likely to confirm that that's correct. So maybe we can't always trust it as truth, and that's where the bias has that bit of consequence, right? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so about the bias, like the most concern me is actually the AI companies when they sell their products and they are not very transparent about the bias in their systems and how they collected the training data. This can impact lives. And I have real examples. In actually a loan approval, right? Something like this. Maybe if the data is not transparent enough, we don't know the risks, we don't know how we collected this, it can impact a life, right? So this is a real example of if you don't understand the bias and you are sure that you are documented these and how you collected the data, how you test out other risks, how you mitigated, it will be awful, especially in the critical systems. As also Dr. Lauren mentioned, that the face detection systems in US also and here in the detecting criminals still it discriminates between people, not only based on the variables. So this stuff is really concerning me. Yeah, the bias, and it will always be a problem because the AI is shaped upon your training data. Even in ChatGPT, you all know that OpenAI go the beyond step because of the reinforcement learning feedback, right? So when you're annotating data, they annotate the data binary, 0 or 1, and actually real life is not binary, it's a spectrum. So in these concerns, we need to make sure that everybody understand that there are even the labelers, even collecting the training data, whoever controls this has an opinion, right? So we need to make sure we diversify the data as much as we can, and we also document how the data is collected to able to mitigate the risk of bias.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it seems like the risk for bias is often intertwined with the risk for transparency and how it's collected and what was used with it. We can, just last week, we can look at the EU AI laws coming out around how to use and how they're planning to use AI. Bias sort of ties in with the privacy concerns around things like future crime, right? Like if you've ever seen the Minority Report, it's prohibited under the new EU AI laws to classify somebody's risk to commit a crime. There are a bunch of loopholes that you can look into around how that gets used, but it seems like we should be transparent about how we're going to use AI. I guess it's sort of a problem of scale, right? Like we already do many of the things that AI does, we just do it ourselves, and so we are responsible to ourselves. AI lets us do those things at scale. It lets us do them much faster, it lets us do it for much cheaper. So it exacerbates existing problems that we already have. Society is already biased, so it's unsurprising that many of our models are biased, but it's the scale that it achieves.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's that whole is it like AI as a mirror reflecting us when in reality it's more like a magnifying glass and we are ants,
Totally.
right? It's
That's exactly it.
it blows things up.
Okay, great.
So I would take maybe a different perspective, but very similar, and the reasoning behind are very similar. I'm thinking from the solution perspective. Yes, we all know bias exists, and we all know garbage in, garbage out. But what scares me is, for example, the Google woke AI, that when it generates people's image, it tends to generate a darker skin just to overcorrect. They overcorrect it. So what scares me is even a leading company like Google, they don't know how to fix their bias issues. that's the things that scare me the most. And think about our own company. We're a customer-facing company, and we have a lot of governance controls around ethics and bias, and we have internal discussions, multidisciplinary discussions, try to evaluate our product and make sure we are having human in the loop, like Keri mentioned. But my concern is, even the 5 of us or 6 of us sitting here, we're not representative the whole aspects of our society.
Right.
Our view is so
We
focused.
tried.
Yeah, we tried. And if you search on LinkedIn or anywhere, there's discussion about ethical AI everywhere in the world, almost every day, maybe multiple times per day. Even with that much of discussion, companies like Google, or including a lot of companies, they don't know how to solve the problem. So that's what concerns me is, first one is the solution. Second is how diverse we are. It's actually more diverse than we have expected. And so maybe we'll talk more about that, but that leads to the importance of communication. And open up your mind and listen to other people's perspective when you build products. I'll pause here, I mean, because there's a lot to discuss.
Yeah, that's a really good segue to to my follow-up question within the same thing. Do you think there is a solution for that? Like or how would you imagine, like we're not talking about the feasibility of that solution, but we're talking about what you would think that solution might look like in terms of, in this case, bias.
Well, I mean, I think it's like, we all kind of touched on it, but it's like how the tool is going to be used and the explainability behind it. I mean, if we're implementing tools and we're using tools and we have no idea how they've been built or what recommendations it's making and how it all functions, it'll be very difficult for us to be making good decisions on how to mitigate bias, right? So I think the explainability around how products have been built, how they're actually using the data, and therefore what that output's going to look like. If we don't actually, if we want to be lazy and not take the time to really understand the implications of that, then I think we're going to have a lot of problems. And I think that's also part of the risk. For sure, it's always people, right? But I mean, AI creates like a lot of benefits in terms of saving time. And so I think that's like part of our responsibility when we're making recommendations on products that we want to purchase, tools that we want to be using in our companies, like understanding how that tool actually works. Like black box to me is not an okay solution.
I almost, like I was looking for a shirt today and I couldn't find it, but I almost wore it, which just says like, be a good digital citizen.
Yeah.
And I think like it does come down to us being like people that want to take the time and make the effort, right? So that becomes the number one thing. But if there was an actual tangible solution that was implementable today, that would ensure that AI was used ethically everywhere, always going forward, I would be a very wealthy person.
Yes.
And decidedly I'm not. So
Yeah, aligning our interests is difficult, right?
Yeah.
So, because there's a sort of a race to market. So
Yeah.
it's like Google is racing Microsoft, the USA is racing China. So there's a race to market, but there's also the other side, the tension of, well, is this safe? What harm will we do by racing into the market?
Yeah. So, like, to talk about the solution, I will talk about from 2 perspectives. First perspective is technically. Technically, like all AI developers, engineers, scientists need to understand that nowadays we have fairness metrics. We can actually do metrics in our data and define fairness, what is fair and what is responsible, and actually we can have numbers, right? And these numbers could be like, yes, manually collected, but it will give a metric, and will be good for companies and for developers to understand how fair is their AI, right? Based on these metrics. So technically, yes, we can now, and I want also all of us to read on this, right? Because there is a lot of metrics nowadays try to measure the fairness, and actually we try to do it inside the organizations. Second thing is actually legally. In any critical system that can impact someone's life, should be audits happen on the data, right? Because there is no way, as they said, it's a race. I want to deploy this solution and this. So legally, as the European Act AI about the risk approach said, I think this is the best way to handle this stuff. There should be a human feedback, there should be an audit to understand how much risk we are taking.
Definitely agree. Yes.
I echo what he just said. There are a lot of metrics that we can use. Based on our experiences, there are so many metrics that we end up finding that it still need to be the person, the discussion within teams. Which metrics is closer to the reality? One concern I see is the funding. The funding about research on bias is not there because it's not generating that much profit if you ever put that funding in a different space where you research on new AI products. So it still goes back to the people that we use it. So I think the critical thinking is so important that we need to be skeptical about what you see, what you develop, and question a lot.
Well, and just to jump in on that, like I had an opportunity to go down to South by Southwest last week, and I sat in on so many interesting discussions. And one of them that just like totally freaked me out was, it was a Google Gemini talk, and there was like some people from McKinsey, people from Google, like these are all really big, important companies that we kind of look to for answers on some of these questions. And they had a use case where they were using AI to generate responses to people's questions around health data. And people preferred to have an answer from the AI than they did a human being. And so I also feel that it comes down to like, what is the customer preference? Because that is also going to be steering these companies to be developing things in that regard as well. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting, and totally freaks me out. Like, you know, you have a health concern and you'd be more willing to talk to an AI than you would a human. And one of the other pieces that they measured was empathy. And I was like, okay, well, the human for sure is going to win out on that metric, and they did not. So not only did they prefer to speak with the AI because they felt that it provided better information, they also felt that it was more empathetic than a human. Scary.
I have a piece to jump in on, but I think it ties into a different question that I will bring it back to.
Okay,
So,
okay, deal.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I think this is turning out to be a great discussion because it keeps touching on different points that are coming up. So the next big, huge concern that I think everyone has is about their privacy. Like we were talking about data and the people's data. Like Moamen mentioned, Elon Musk just, started open sourcing Grok, which has been trained. We don't exactly know, but has been trained, what we can guess, based on tweets from people. God knows from when. Like if I said something in 2009 when I was a kid, and I was a kid back then, and I said something really stupid, that can be, informed people. So with those things, and the concerns are just so long about privacy. People's data is being used to train this. People data is being sent on a daily basis. Billions of points of text are being sent to these cloud servers who are processing it, coming back with data, all sorts of privacy issues happening. Tell me what your concern is. How do you approach that? Like, how do you try to make sense of this? And then let's end with what you think the solution could be.
Like, just to very, very quickly jump in and like, I really hope this isn't a bummer, but none of us have had privacy.
Before.
Like, you don't have it. Like, respectfully, like whatever you think you've done to scrape yourself from the internet, like outside of like the EU and having like the right to be forgotten, we don't have that. Within Canada, our privacy laws are existent, and I think that's about as high as I can go on that. So, and when we think about privacy online, we do have to consider the general consequence of not having privacy online. For example, there's your YouTube algorithm. You can see different things that you might want to, like, that you were not planning on watching. Because my husband watches YouTube on my YouTube account all the time, I am now suggested speedruns constantly. I have no interest. It's not for me. And that's harmless. That's fairly harmless. But if we go back to 2014, 15, 2016, and we look at what ads you'd be shown or what videos you'd be shown or what would come up on Facebook, well, that actually ended up influencing an entire election. Yeah. And not just in one country. in multiple countries, and coups were started. And we can look at the legal ramifications of that through Cambridge Analytica and that massive case where people's behavior was modified because their privacy was violated. But they signed up for this because essentially if you had a friend that was playing not Farmville, but a farming game adjacent on Facebook, because your friend or great aunt decided to play this game, well, that company then had access to your data and the data of all of the friends of the person who played this game. That data is then farmed, that data is then able to create a web, and they can send you targeted ads that can manipulate the behavior you do and start basically raising temperatures. So that's a massive potential issue, right? All stemming from our lack of privacy. But on the note of Twitter, honestly, I am so glad. I think forgetting my password to Twitter during the first week that I had it, and then losing the password to that email was the best thing that's ever happened, by far. So no positives for me, unfortunately. Just don't believe anything you see online, I guess, and go live in the woods.
I mean, we already put Google Homes in our home. You already put Amazon Alexa in your house. And so it's just it's just another problem of scale again, right? In the past, we don't really have good natural language to text. But now we do. We have really, really good natural language to text. Depending on the scale of the server you have, real-time translation, right? We're eventually going to reach a point where we have chatbots that you're speaking with, and the latency is it feels like you're speaking to something that's real,
Totally.
that is sentient, because we're going to have that level of speed, right? So you already have lost many of your privacy rights by doing these kinds of things, whether you meant to or not, and so AI just exacerbates once again those problems that we already have, but now there's another great tool for natural language ever since 2017 or 2018 when Transformers became, not Michael Bay's Transformers.
I think because most of us were sitting in this room, we work in the AI field. Maybe take the perspective of a general public. How much privacy can we hold? We have to use YouTube. Not like Lauren, not everyone will forget their Twitter's password, right? We are already giving away our privacy. And think about ourselves. I've got the question from many people asking, is AI overhearing my conversation? How come I just talk about something and then when I open up my Facebook, it has an ad about what I just talked about? So for us that we work in AI, we kind of know how the algorithm behind, but for the general public, how do they know what's happening? And it just gets creepy, and they don't know, but what is their choice? They don't know what's going on. And even for us, yes, something can be open source, but what can we do? I just find things are under control by those leading companies, it is getting farther and farther away from us, even for those that work in the AI field. I just feel like you're asking about solutions. That's a huge question. And
Yes.
Well, I mean, we could look at the EU AI Act at some level. 2024 was not the year that, you seeing extremely targeted ads became a problem. That's been a problem for a long time. But it could be a year that, because of the focus on AI, because of the general public beginning to understand what it can do, that they become refocused again on data privacy, which has already been an existing problem. But how will the data that I have lost, how will it be used? Maybe we can regulate the use.
Yeah, I try to be optimistic, but I cannot. So let's talk about very simple scenario, right? You have a data of customers, and you want to do training, right? You will do anonymization, right? You will try to remove numbers, remove names, and all that stuff. The funny thing that we use AI to remove it, which has an error. So, if you want to truly anonymize your data, try to remove sensitive stuff, you cannot achieve it 100%, technically, right? So I try to be optimistic, but no, there is a lot of stuff, as they said, the solution will be a bigger question, but here is another thing. The privacy is a fight between us and companies, because Facebook, we are the product, right?
That's
All
right.
the social media, we are the product. So how you will fight for your privacy, and actually your data is the expensive, right? Is the actually cost Like my data, your data, the targeted ads, all these stuff are the mainstream revenue of social media. So it's a big fight. It's like the privacy and concerns around AI, they hear the conversation, targeted ads, all these stuff is a long run fight. It's not like we cannot have a solution for it right now, but yeah, it's a big concern.
Well, and I think like I've heard, like around the dinner table at my house, and my parents saying, well, I'm not that interesting. Like I don't really mind if they're tracking me because it's actually really useful because I'm getting recommendations on things that are actually a benefit. And you're like, okay, sure, like that's great. Like it knows that you want to put carrots in your cart, and that's like super mom. I love that for you. But I think to everyone's comments on this side, it's that critical thinking aspect around, why am I being served up this information? Or like the critical thinking around how did you actually come to formulate that decision? And so I think by giving away our privacy, we also are really maybe not understanding how that's impacting the way that we come to decisions around things, because we're being served up and being given all the information that we already agree with, right? And so I think even for the most critical thinker, it can still be really hard to kind of separate that out.
All right.
Can I harp on it one more time?
Yeah.
So I taught a class in 2017 about science, technology, and society, and so we didn't really have LLMs then, obviously. But we were talking about privacy at that time and losing your data, and or losing access or control of your own data. And the concern is not like the concern is right now about what's happening, but the concern is also like in 10 years from now, the technology that you haven't thought of yet.
Yeah.
But the data still exists, right? Like your data, we can store data forever, right? So it's not necessarily even the technology right now that is a problem. It's the technology that we're going to continue to exist that can continue to leverage the data that's against you. And I'm not really part of a marginalized group, but imagine a bad regime having access to that data and being able to find you very easily. That could be very frightening.
That's the uncertainties. That's and that's why we put the risk level at 6, because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, so can I just follow up on that? Like you mentioned about the potential benefits that we get from AI as opposed to these concerns that we have. Do you think there is a balance here? Is it worth it? Like, I mean, those carrots in your cart, or those speed running videos, or all the snoring devices that are suggested on my Instagram feed, or just based on what they listen to in my Apple Watch. So they are nice, but are they, is it worth it?
Yes. Like no, but yes. Like the areas where AI is making such good is not going to be social media. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be in behavior modification, and it's not going to be in these wider scale things, and it's not going to be in us getting ads because they've already tracked all our data and also sent us certain directions. It's going to be in medicine, where computer vision is able to read an X-ray and identify cancer on a patient well before a doctor could. Mm-hmm. It's going to be in potentially, and please don't hold me to this, self-driving vehicles, where computer vision is going to do something fantastic and, I don't know, stop a car from hitting a kid. Yeah. Like, it's going to be in those areas where it could potentially help. Like, the idea of having AI potentially solve issues around risk factors for different illnesses, and being able to be screened because it knows who you are at a young age and say, hey, you're probably going to have dementia, so let's work on this for care so you can start taking these steps now. Preventative care would be a fantastic area. Or maybe we could potentially apply it to some of our systems and make some of our current government and social support systems perform more efficiently. Mm-hmm. It can do wonders for efficiency and is fantastic when it comes to predictive analytics and risk mitigation. Yeah. It has so many good things. Social media is not one of them, and our general behavior modification isn't. But
social media is the one we're talking about because it's the one that we're probably all scared of. It's election year. It's election year in the U.S. It's not election year in Canada, but the U.S. policy affects Canada heavily. Massively. Right? Yeah. And in Michigan, a month ago, there was really good deep fakes for Biden saying some stuff. New Hampshire. And he didn't say that stuff. I mean, you can watch really funny Minecraft, presidents play Minecraft videos on YouTube. So there's some joy there, but there's also the, how will it affect our election? Yeah. That seems like a big threat.
Yeah. 100%.
100%.
I think now we have no choice. Yes,
Yeah.
there are so many things that can benefit life, of our life, but it doesn't mean that AI, you just grow on that track
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you
right.
don't, it's
Yeah.
more of we don't have control. And the advancement in the healthcare is actually helping in social media. Those algorithms are transferable. So that's what's scary. And also, it doesn't, so AI is not really driven by which area is beneficial to us. Is more of what is the profit that's generating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I definitely feel anything tied to like consumerism, politics, like those ones I definitely I don't see a ton of benefit for society overall. Things around like human safety and definitely like healthcare, like those get me super excited because I just think those are areas where, there's just like a clear direct benefit. So.
And the terrifying and crappy part, which Yukun was mentioning, is we don't get this without the financial
that.
benefit of the awful AI that we don't want to have, that's going to manipulate our thoughts or change the direction that we want to do. And I say AI, and I want to stress every time I say the words AI, replace it with people. Because it's not AI that's doing it, it's people implementing it and using it as a tool, right? Or people creating said thing or coding said data, right? Like that, it's still people. But yeah, we don't get the benefit without, and Pandora's box is open. At this point, we have the potential of not receiving any of the benefit and only getting the bad stuff because that box is open.
Yeah.
So,
So can I build on just this last point you made about because my next question is about autonomy and agency. Like, is it the human driving or is it the AI driving? So there are concerns about AI's ability to make decisions, basically. Like with AI agents, with all the capability that it can. Or you started with the concern of AI creating more AI. So first of all, explain for us how valid these concerns are, like in terms of autonomy. And if that is the case, are we looking at another situation of, okay, the genie is out of the bottle, there's nothing to be done, so let's try to do our best with it and keep our fingers crossed? Or is there more that we can do in terms of regulation, education, that can help mitigate the potential dangers of this?
Yeah, maybe I can start. So that's a good question about the autonomy and decision making. I have like very two big examples we know nowadays, right? The self-driving cars and the AI bots that trade per minute, right? These are two big examples, or they are fully autonomy, right? The decision making is by AI. But the thing is, in self-driving cars, there is a lot of accidents happened, right? Because there is like a special scenario, there's an occlusion, the radar didn't detect a static object or something. A lot of things happen over the years, right? So I still feel that in some critical situations, the AI should be an assist decision making. As Dr. Lorna said, AI can prevent me hit a kid when I drive a car and I didn't see him, right? But like to take a level 5 of I sleep and the car drives, I still believe that we are not in that safety yet. Also in financial markets, and a lot of people do AI trading and all these stuff. Actually, a lot of people make money, but the big harm is destabilizing the market, because the AI try to get, let's say, some variables and detect some flows in the market and trade with it, right? So these big examples are, like, for me, a concern, right? A lot of people depend on this and they won't make the AI to be first decision making, and I still disagree with that.
Okay.
yeah, I would jump in and just note that, like, when we talk about autonomy and we talk about agency, we are also talking about accountability. Because at the end of the day, if AI makes these decisions, or there is a decision that is made that causes a negative impact, who is held accountable? Can you hold a machine accountable? Or do you hold the company and the people that made it accountable? Because when we actually talk about AI, and I actually did a study on this, on specifically explanatory journalism, so how do things like Vox or The Conversation talk about technology? So artificial intelligence, robots, that sort of stuff. Vastly, anytime that something goes wrong, or this technology is responsible for something going wrong, oh, it's the technology that did it. But if it goes right, Elon Musk did it, right? So we name people when things go right, and we give them responsibility, and we say, yes, congratulations, you did such a good job. We're so proud of what you made. You made this. But the second things go wrong, the machine, it was all the machine did it. It was like, oh, it was not people. People could never. But again, it's people. So when we talk about autonomy and when we attribute basically decisions to machines, we do have to keep in mind that a person was still originally behind all of it. Because otherwise you get into a lot of legal gray area, right?
I'm thinking about, so Hattie, you just mentioned about regulation and education. I'm a bit concerned because AI is kind of new, we're still exploring it, but for our next generation, they grow up with having a Google Home at home. And they are so naturally, they just ask Google Home to play a nursery rhyme for them. Do they naturally trust AI? And how do we teach them? So goes back to the critical thinking piece, is I think education is the key, especially for next generation or at school, at university, because we tell them, like Lauren said, we are the people behind AI. AI is not controlling us. We are the one controlling AI. And from a regulation perspective, I've been following the ADA Act, AI and Data Act in Canada closely, and I had the lucky to work on the ISO standards for AI model management system. The biggest challenge is how do we enforce it? And
Totally.
also, how do we make sure the regulation is broad enough that it's covering all the cases? We can dig into it later. I'll give other people some chance to see.
Yeah.
It's like laws are always slow to catch up, right? And things that we didn't used to, like we don't regulate brain scanning deeply right now. Like find a technology that could scan your brain, it probably wouldn't be, I mean, I guess I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know for sure in Canada if that's illegal, but probably none of us know off the top of the head, is that illegal or not? But you're not really worried about whether that's illegal because you don't believe that anyone can do it yet, and we probably can't do it yet. Although there are some interesting studies in 2022 around fMRI studies and feeding that to an LLM and saying, okay, generate the image that this person is thinking of, and it's somewhat okay at doing it, but we're not carting around MRIs everywhere, right? So we're not that worried about that yet. But laws are always slow to catch up because we get new things. There were no laws against driving when we were on horses because there was no cars. So we're always going to play catch up. But AI is definitely a place where it feels like we need to catch up a little faster because it feels like it's very disruptive and has a lot higher potential for harm.
Any more on this? Okay. So we already briefly touched upon this about, I'm going to bring up social manipulation again. So we talked about that, yes, there is, this is an election year, not just in the US, many places all around the world, but obviously like the US with their media and their crazy investment in advertisement and one-upping each other in creating fake stuff is the biggest source of concern. Like Graham brought up the New Hampshire example of Joe Biden's voice being fake, replicated. In my AI class, when I leave for a break, I play some, cool thing with my fake voice for people to not miss me. So how, like, in terms of that social manipulation of thought on a massive scale, what are the big concerns? What are we looking at? And do you feel at least this one, because there are 5, 10, 20 big social media companies, that there can be some sort of regulation, at least in this one, or not, or it's just like the same thing? What are your concerns? What do you think in terms of a solution?
Okay, so I feel like we could agree that if you're going to generate a prominent political figure's voice and use it, it should be required that you say that it's AI generated in a very obvious manner. because I still want to watch my presidents play Minecraft videos on YouTube because
Yeah.
it's very funny. But that's
Yeah.
probably not socially manipulating me. Probably not.
Yeah, apparently 11 Labs, the company that was used to create that, like I have that. That's the one that I create my fake voice with. So they say that they have it, but it's kind of like the voice is not obvious. Like if they run it through a program, it says yes, this is AI generated. But when it is like one of my students in the class, they said like, what if somebody just calls my nana and says, yeah, I'm in trouble,
That's
give me
right.
some money.
Oh
So-
yeah, that's going to be
Literally
for
right?
sure.
It's already happening.
Yeah.
That is already
happening.
happening. Yeah.
And
that
like,
is-
and that's like one small example, but like, women are kind of screwed by this because already we're seeing AI deepfakes of a lot of like sexually explicit images of women who did not have anything to do with or consent to any of this.
That's right.
Where they're literally just generating women's bodies and then using it for AI deepfake porn, which is ruining lives, and like it's already being done.
Yeah.
So, like, is AI deepfake voices, like, are they being used currently to call your grandma? Yeah, like, and that's, like, popular scam.
Yeah.
So, like, this has all happened, and we're trying to play catch-up on regulation, but, like, think in Canada. Actually, I'll take a general poll. General guess, folks, what year did Canada come up with an accessibility act for like, just accessibility online? So, Accessible Canada Act. Anyone want to venture a guess? Would we assume probably early 2000s? 2019. 2019 was when the Accessible Canada Act came out. It doesn't have to properly be fully implemented for a barrier-free digital space within Canada until 2040.
2040.
That's how far behind we are on base level.
Acts.
So I don't know how well we can catch up to something that's already here. Now, is the U.S. had their Accessibility Act well before that, like, so, on the bright side, like 20 years ago. But are we going to have regulation that's implementable and like you can say, like, that's something that we can actually hold people accountable for and like have an implementation plan? Are we going to have that in place before November?
No.
No, probably not. Definitely not. So that's.
I've been saying this to some friends, like, you shouldn't trust everything you read on the internet, but you still trust some things that you read on the internet. The question is, will you ever trust anything on the internet at a certain point, right? Like when we reach, I go to Reddit often if I want to know a real human's opinion on something, but that's probably not, like it's not, we already have bots, and now we're going to have a lot more bots, right? And they're going to sound really convincing, like you can't tell. Right,
Yeah.
you talk to ChatGPT. Yeah, sometimes you can like figure it out, but it's pretty good in one-off context, right? So it's like, will you continue to believe the things that you read on the internet when we can generate human-sounding things with a slant towards a product or a slant towards a certain social view? You just won't know. I feel like it goes towards like having to. It's. I don't want this. But it goes towards like, how do I know you're a real human? Do we need a verification system? But I don't want you to I don't want the government of Canada to put a verification system in place. But how will we know that we're talking to a real human?
Yeah.
So I want also to touch base on point that technically we can detect that this thing is generated by AI, right? It's an old algorithm. We can do adversarial attacks on whatever the image generated, voice generated, even OpenAI, ChatGPT generated. Even OpenAI has a tool that detects if this text is generated by ChatGPT or not, right? My concerns are media, scams, even education, right? Now, we in universities, we have like tools that says, oh, this code is copied or this document is copied. But right now we need more advanced tools. But what I think at least the media and also the companies and social media at least do simple adversarial check on if in each content that it says. At least we have something that detects and says from the system that this is AI generated. This is not hard to detect, but we need to develop more tools for this because technically it's like not hard. Because a lot of adversarial attacks happen and we can actually detect this image or this voice is AI generated. So It's not that hard, but it should be regulated, yes.
But I think the challenge is like the citizen journalism and like accessibility of tools, right? It's like anybody can create content. Like I could make a deep fake. It might not be that great. So it's like I think the challenge is that as the tools become more accessible to everybody, we all have the ability to create pretty interesting content.
Yeah.
And I think from like a communications perspective, like perception is reality. You know, like even if you know that it's AI generated, you might forget like where you heard it or why you thought that, or like, you know, you hear it from someone else and then it kind of reconfirms. Like, I think that's like part of the challenge too.
Yeah, that's a very big challenge because like I was just exactly thinking about that. Like you can just literally download an image generator or voice generator off of Hugging Face, install it on your own laptop and just go with it. It might not be perfect, but it does work. Like,
and soon it will be.
it will be good.
Yeah,
Something
totally.
will train something better. Yeah. So do you think we have a solution for this, or like it's like everything else? Like it's kind of like a pattern. Like every time we just go around. Yes, it's scary. It's even scarier than what you thought. But yeah, the solution. Yeah, we don't know. So.
I think there are two pieces. As AI practitioners, we need to be responsible for what we are developing. And like Moamen just mentioned, there are easy things that we can provide more transparency to the users. This content is generated by AI. On the other hand, think about the general public. I'm still thinking it that way because over time, we adapt to it. We learn, oh, this is definitely AI generated. Or there's one day my dad told me, you know what, a robot can dance really well. I've seen a video of a robot dancing is better than a man or woman. And I was thinking, for the maturity of robot right now, it wouldn't be able to dance like that. But how do they know? So I think from our own perspective is at work, we be responsible for the things that we generate or we make. Outside of our work, we outreach to people around us. We educate them as much as we can and teach them how to have critical thinking skill and always question and be skeptical.
Yeah, and I think business will play like a large role in the responsibility as well. Like, you know, you think of like academic institutions, like they certainly play a role in terms of educating people. Governments, of course, play a role with the regulation, but I think the businesses that are actually creating these tools and creating profit from it, like they have a responsibility as well. And I think business typically is leading, or can be in some of those conversations for good and for bad. Academia typically is like right behind it, and government is usually last, you know? Yeah.
So can I use this last point you mentioned in terms of like, could some sort of a suggestion or that solution that we are talking about be that the businesses who are benefiting the most out of this invest in advancing algorithms, education, like all the things that we need to sort of, you know, lower these risks of AI? Could that be a solution to, you know, having a more ethical AI, if you will?
I would say 100%, but only if it's not just a checkbox. Only if it's not just something you're like, oh, did I do my AI compliance? Great.
Check.
Did I hire, like, is my diversity like this? Check. Like, as long as it's not just that checkbox and it's actually meaningfully done critically and engaged with regularly. So we're doing iterative processing here where we go in and we say, this is our AI policy. Is it working? Yes? No? Okay, let's go back. Let's do it again. Now is it working with this new information that we have? So as long as it's an actual ongoing practice that is meaningfully engaged with, sure.
And I think that's a great point. And I think it's like any other business function. Like you don't just like do some accounting. Like we did some accounting and it was good. And like we did that for a bit. Or like we did some marketing and that was fine. It's like, this is going to be core to like what we do. You can't just do a bit of it and check the box. Like it's going to be a part of your business that you have to be managing all of the time.
Yeah, you can't just do an ethics. Yay.
Well, this is why diversity and inclusion in leadership positions is important, right? Like diversity of opinions is very important because we are what we do to ourselves. Like with every tool that we build, why do we act the way that we act? We are responsible to our society to act in certain ways. We can't, there's no silver bullet that makes that makes AI just good. Like it doesn't work that way, right? We have to be responsible to the companies we work at. We have to be responsible to the citizens of our own country to implement ethical AI and ethical practices in our business. And that's why diversity of opinions is very important across the business sphere. That's why it should be advocated for.
And leaders need to plan time for it. We cannot expect all the data scientists to do extra ethical testing if we are not giving them time for it. So leaders need to set up the strategy and the culture in the company, like ATB, that we actually give this space for data scientists to use, and we know that this checkbox needs to be done, and there's people governing it. We need to demonstrate it in front of a multidisciplinary team rather than you say, oh, it's checked. So it all relies on the leaders' support and the culture of the company.
All right, great. So the next question is one that people have had concerns for a very long while, and it's about, like this last week we saw this video with figure one robot and interacting with a human being powered by figure one powered by ChatGPT. Say, hey, what do you see? It says, I'm seeing an apple. Can you give me something to it? It gives you the apple. And yeah, right at that moment, say, okay, what if the robot doesn't like it and just throws the apple at this guy? Like, I mean, that's possible. Or at the same time, it could be the other way around, like what Lauren was mentioning about people who need care. This robot can provide that care. So in terms of that human interaction with AI, if you want to put it under that title, what do you think the concerns are, the benefits are, and again, what we can do about that?
That's a good question. The human interaction. Like, let me take an example from the bank. So right now, every big organization that like customer service is one of the most important elements inside it. They want to optimize and reduce the costs, and they want to build AI virtual assistants and all this stuff, right? So I think there is a big research 5 years ago about is the mobile banking app is better or an AI chatbot to do the transaction for you? Like the research survey said that the customer always needs the human interaction, right? So the companies want to build the AI virtual assistants to do the human interaction, because if you said someone, if someone like very old and like 70 or 80 years old and told him do a transfer on mobile, he told no, I don't trust this thing. But if he talked to someone, maybe an AI or something, and do a human interaction, maybe he can trust it, right? So the benefits, yes, there is a lot of like use cases that the AI to be used in human interaction is good to trust to do a transaction or a transfer in a bank. This is like a specific use case. So that's actually could be benefit. But in the other side, there is like a very extreme stuff happened, right? I don't know if you all heard about this, but there was like someone that committed suicide with a 6-week-long conversation with a chatbot. I don't know if everyone heard about this, but actually this has happened. And there was like a company that developing a healthcare chatbots. So he interacted with the chatbots with 6-week-long conversation, and it ended up with a suicide. So this is actually also concerning, right? Let's take another example. The Microsoft chatbot that lived in Twitter for 1 day and became a racist, right? Yeah. This is also between human interactions. So all these stuff, there is like a very good benefit from it and a very big concern out of it. So like stress testing and try to like incrementally deploying the AI in human interactions to make sure it's safe is a critical thing.
Mm-hmm.
I want to jump in just very briefly on the robotic side, which is partially why I keep looking at you and like, hello. But we've done, I would argue, pretty different forms of, like, I would focus on like social robots, specifically robots whose primary job is to communicate with people. Like that's my field, right? how do people interact with these robots that are meant to interact with them? And my PhD dissertation actually looked at loneliness and developing how you would develop, or could you develop, or should you develop companion robots for people who are experiencing loneliness? And what are the risks that you can mitigate there? And how do you look at this? Like, so for example, if you're experiencing this lack or loss of meaningful connection, you're feeling lonely, and you physically can't be near other people, which previously a lot of research here was around the elderly and folks in care homes, or people in weird isolation moments like in the space station. But then 4 years ago, which I can't believe it was 4 years ago, we all got to experience what it was like to be completely isolated just as a part of the general population. What happens when you can't physically see your friends or leave your house for 2 weeks to many years, depending on where you were located, right? And that's where, potentially a robot can connect you. And the research that I did just showed that the robot's not going to be your companion. Your robot's not going to solve your loneliness. Talking to other people, or actually communicating with other people and facilitating, like a robot to facilitate you actually going and communicating with other people, was the solution. So yes, can it be helpful to interact with? Yes, of course, 100%. In that it can help you connect with other people, which we still do need, right? So but there's a lot of ethical concerns there, of course, right? Because how we have machines, like how machines interact with people, also depends entirely on the context of the people and the way in which they're interpreting what the machine is saying. Like, if you take, I don't want to turn this into too much of a lecture. I recognize some of your students, so I'm tempted to, but like if we take like one of Hall's theories of communication, of encoding and decoding model, and we apply it to machine communication instead. The machine has a context and an understanding of what it's saying, and it sends out this output, and you receive it within your own context. So in the same way that my text messages can absolutely be misinterpreted, and I come across as a cold-hearted human anytime I send an email. Like, I've had to do a lot of work on my emails to make sure I sound less like I want to kill the person on the other end.
So that's what it is about
Yeah,
your
no,
emails.
100%. My emails are terrible, and I know this,
So
and I
just
do. But, and trust me, they're better than they were before. In the same way that I can be misinterpreted, machines absolutely can, but then the machine can misinterpret what the people want to. So if you're saying, I need X, Y, or Z, and it misinterprets one of those words, well, guess what? You're probably not getting X, Y, or Z. You might be getting 1, 2, or 3 instead. And English in particular is a language where a lot of words mean the same thing. And even the context needs to shape it properly. So having good prompts drastically impacts the interaction. I could talk about human-computer interaction, I think, for the remaining of our time, and then well into the evening, so I'll stop there. But yeah, everything around it depends on the context.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like that's the concern is more like software interfaces that you interact with. Because often, how is AI often portrayed in media? It's a bunch of robots that rise up and kill you, usually, if you look at it. But if you do a lot of work in real robotics, hardware is very difficult. And hardware can't fix itself very easily yet. So, even if there were a bunch of robotic soldiers, somebody still needs to fix them. If you don't have a robot that can, continuously fix them and all the production lines for the manufacturing, very quickly, you no longer have a robot army. Right, so I'm not that worried about mechanized autonomy making problems for us. It seems more like the problems are around software interfaces, because look at the scaling of companies, right? Like, what companies scale like rockets? Well, it's very easy to deploy software and to scale software. You have to hire a lot of people, you got to buy more servers, but producing a manufacturing line for robots takes a lot longer to set up and to do it correctly. And you have real life mechanical engineering and electrical engineering problems. So. Yeah.
Like, to be very clear, wherever you think we currently are with social robotics, or like with robots that can act and move and be like people, I want you to take like 20 years back. Like, jump all the way back. Even when we had Sophia, the robot that was able to talk to people in real time and had a real human-looking face and was really creepy to look at, that's all Wizard of Oz technique, where someone is literally writing out the actual responses behind the scenes. All Wizard of Oz, I promise you.
And those aren't the ones you should be worried about.
Not even slightly.
Right, the ones that you should be worried about are like autonomous loitering systems, like systems that can loiter over an area at like 10,000 feet for 24 hours, and when your satellites determine that it is the correct time, immediately strike a target. So like military applications of AI, that is the more concerning part of the equation. There's like a UNIDAR, the UN report on use of AI, and I was scrolling through it a few days ago, and like some of the things that they can see as coming down the pipe for AI use cases is very fast legal opinions on whether the strike is legal, technically. Right, so these are the kinds of things that we need to consider whether they're worth doing. But we are looking into them, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
We're doing it.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah.
Okay. So can I have, I want to open this up to see if there are any questions from the audience. Just be mindful that this is live stream, so if there are any privacy concerns, of course your voice is not directly captured. I will reiterate what you say, but just clarifying that, please.
Kind of curious with the opportunity to interact. You mentioned critical thinking in that. So I give an example, B-2 bomber in fly-by-wire, the computer thinks so fast, that's how it's able to fly. I would suggest maybe the New York Stock Exchange or the Toronto Stock Exchange might be the same type of scenario where it thinks so fast that it doesn't have the opportunity to interact. Some thoughts on that, our ability to interact with AI?
So if I can reiterate the question, which it's about that point you mentioned about the speed to react. Like you had an example of a military case. This is more a general concern about in stock exchange or in general, basically having humans competing with AI-enabled machines. Like, what are some concerns, like in terms of fairness, in terms of what other ethical concerns that might be?
I mean, so the examples that you gave, so what's the difference between algorithms and AI? It sort of depends how you define the term. I agree that especially in hypersonics or supersonics, you don't have time, you can't fly that, right? It's the physics change too fast for you to be able to do it. You need autonomy often. But the person, where the human needs to be in the loop is like, is it appropriate to target this? Like, they need to have the finger on the button that clicks. If that is a weapons system, it needs to be the person that's launching the weapons, not the computer that's launching the weapons. We're responsible to ourselves, and we shouldn't give up control of our weapons systems, specifically in that case.
Yeah, but this is the concern. But like, actually, to answer this question for the good, as example, like when you drive a car and you have like a hit assist, right? And something came up in front of your car, like the AI in the car will react way faster than your leg, right? So this is actually good. Also on a stock exchange, based on his question, we have like not a fully autonomous AI, but back then in 2008 crisis, I still believe that there was, I know a friend that he was working in JP Morgan Bank. So they have something like not a fully AI, but semi-AI that actually predicted that there will be a crisis happening. And the AI here will be very good for a fast decision for human to take the correct in trades, not to have many losses. So there is a lot of situations that the fast decision making of AI is good, but yeah, as Graham said, sometimes in critical military stuff, there should be a human supervision, not to the AI to act fastly on that.
Thank you.
And I'd be willing to be wrong about this, but I do think that we're seeing things be developed a lot more responsibly in sectors that are very heavily regulated. Like you look at social media, that could be like the opposite spectrum of that. Where I look at like where we play, like in industrial, like running industrial facilities. I mean, like an industrial operator and these companies, like they have a ton of regulations around how these facilities have to be run. And so like the incremental improvements that we're making with technology and that we're making with our products are very measured. And so like, first it's like a suggestion, right? And it's up to that operator, it's up to that engineer, it's up to that individual to be making the decision on what course of action needs to be taken based on their expertise. Will we get to a place like where it's like fully autonomous and being run? Maybe. But I think like the fact that it's like very incremental improvements in that space gives me, like a little bit of optimism that it's being developed responsibly. So I don't know, like I can
Yeah.
only speak for my sector. I don't know if like banking is similar, but
I share it similarly, but I find that sometimes there's a dilemma. For example, for the person that pushed that button, the person may have emotion with him, or well, AI doesn't. Sometimes the way I use ChatGPT to help me write email is when I'm really mad. I write something, and
That's so helpful. Can you make this sound nice?
I want to
Yeah.
take off that human emotion out of
Right.
me, and I just use the ChatGPT
Right.
version. So I just feel better because it wouldn't irritate other people. So I think it's really the balance of how you use it and what you use it.
Yeah, but like your organization, like you're not developing, you're not like the bleeding edge, right? Like you have governance, you have policies, like you have teams of people, you're making investments in how this technology is being developed.
Yeah, there are so many different levels of AI application
Yeah.
for banking. Luckily, we do have some time we don't have to raise too much.
Right.
And we can just take the time, develop the responsible products. So it really varies between different industries.
And sectors, yeah.
Okay, so another question that we have is one that I've heard over and over again, is around are we going to be all looking for jobs in 2 years? Is AI taking over all of our jobs? To what extent is that a concern? And if that is a real concern, how ethical it is to just keep developing these tools that are going to
Well, let me begin with that. I always discuss with my friends, do we still have our job next 5 years? Well, let's go open a restaurant or something, right? So it was last week when you saw the demo of Devon, the first AI software engineer that solved the GitHub issues on open source projects. This is actually a very good thing, but it's not as it's like published. It's like, oh, he can do the whole job. No, I still disagree with that. And I still, like, when I use ChatGPT or any OpenAI tool to help me coding, I still feel like I need to revise the documentation. I don't take whatever he said, like, but actually it makes me faster to develop, right? So from the job displacement topic, I still feel the history have a lot of examples, right? Because for every technology evolves, there is a new jobs created. So
Yeah.
it's displacement, right? You may have not this job nowadays, but you will need to be filled in another job. That's why I feel maybe you can have a team of 10 software engineers to do X amount of jobs, but maybe tomorrow you can have 5 and you can do 20x of this job. And actually the other people can do more beneficial jobs. So we are becoming faster, we are evolving, there are new job opportunities that are created. I'm not very concerned about losing my job, but losing the dynamic of it. And I need to be very prepared and well educated with AI so I can go to the next level, right? If I just be stubborn and said, no, I don't want to learn this, it will not replace me, it will, sooner or later. Yes.
That's literally to your point, at say what we would say like while we were working on the AI program was, AI isn't going to take your job. Someone who knows how to leverage it will.
Yeah.
So, and maybe the job title changes, maybe the description changes slightly, but it's either someone who knows what they're doing is going to replace you in that role, or like you find yourself not having that same position anymore, which in retrospect is also kind of a bleak take, right? Because this disrupts more than, like, normally when we see a new technology come in, like you mentioned, like, yeah, it disrupts a sector, it disrupts an area. Not all of the areas all at once, right? And that's the thing, is like this disrupts.
It's so horizontal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like what industry has AI not disrupted?
I look
Right.
forward to being a prompt engineer.
100%.
I'm just kidding. If you could describe what you wanted, if your product manager could describe what they wanted in enough detail for it to always do what it is that they wanted, that you have to write code to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the way that you might write code might change,
Yes.
right? But you'll still need that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I just think the pressure will get higher, like around doing more with less. right? Like it's no longer going to be like having conversations with your organization to say like, I need this many FTEs. It's like, well, what technologies have you looked at to like replace X, Y, Z? And then, you know, it just becomes like a sea of tools that you have to leverage to do all of these various pieces.
I want to add on this point.
Yeah.
Like 2 weeks ago, there is like a new thing called, we are expecting to have unicorns of one employee, right? So one person can actually build a unicorn, which is, oh my God, like how? So actually people right now are discussing that one person can do a unicorn company, right? So there is a record and they're trying to breaking this record. Is actually one person can do a unicorn company. So yeah, it's how the AI will evolve.
I think things change so quickly, and I always think about it is how do I educate my kids? We don't want to talk about AI right now, and 20 years later, our kids have no job to do, and they just chat with robot every day and not making money.
But they'll still live at home, which I love.
So I'm thinking what skill that they should have that it will never fade, whatever we have.
Yeah.
One is critical thinking. We have talked about it so many times, and communication skill. How do you express what you are thinking in a plain language so other people can understand? Third one is emotion regulation. Like I said, I'm really mad, and how can I manage my emotion a bit better? Fourth one is creativity. How, like you said, one person can build a unicorn. Everyone can build a unicorn, and unicorn is no longer a unicorn. So how to be creative? So I've been thinking about that, and I think job will always be there, but we need to have the skill.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. This was very.
Take your comms degree.
Yeah,
Just throwing it out there. MRU has great communications programs.
Yes.
Come join us.
Any other questions from the
We've
crowd?
got one back there, yeah, a couple.
Oh, so we have a couple questions.
Okay. So my question was, I remember reading before that, like, for instance, ChatGPT tended to do better when instructions were given in English as opposed to other languages, especially less used languages. What are your thoughts as to like how this might affect kind of how countries develop and how cultures develop in the future if potentially a tool is better suited to one group like English or Chinese compared to something else?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of pieces out there, right, that say that English is the biggest coding language.
Yeah, so to answer this question technically, you know, like when the OpenAI did the contract with Microsoft, right? Most of the internet data is English. So there is like a lot of context and a lot of ways to say something, right? Maybe in other language, the accuracy that you get an output from is not the best thing, right? But also this is not only for language, it's actually for domains, right? A lot of companies, they are trying to fine tune the LLMs and also use the help of the OpenAI responses to able to fine tune the LLM to be domain specific, and even if you want it to be language specific. But right now, because the proprietary models like OpenAI and other models are mostly trained on the internet data, which is mostly English by percentage.
Yeah.
That's it, and there is a lot of ways to understand it. But technically, this will change fastly because nowadays there is like a lot of countries has its own LLMs right now, and they are trying to fine tune it and to be very language specific and also for different dialects, not even different language. So this is changing fast, and sooner it will be at a constant based on the fine-tuned data you use.
It's interesting, like this is not going to answer your question whatsoever. I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction. But when you look at even like voice to speech or voice to text, so when we interact with the voice assistant, who will not be named so that I don't have to deal with it right now, it recognizes certain accents way easier than others, even if we're just sticking within English. And that's the same for even robots that are programmed to actually process this language and listen to it a certain way. If you are not speaking in a very, very, very specific English accent, it's not going to understand what you're doing. It's going to send you the wrong way. It's going to be a miscommunication. It's going to be an error. So we already are seeing that, and like it's an interesting like side field where it's changed how people talk to their voice assistants. So the words and the language that you use when you talk to it, like you're going to enunciate a little bit extra.
Yeah.
Like, hey, can you please call so-and-so? And they're like, oh, the contact information for so-and-so is, and I'm like, no, call them. But like how you actually interact and like what you say and the direction you take it changes based on what you're talking to.
That's right.
So it already has, and we've seen that like that modification also for things like Grammarly. Like who does not use a spell checker or a grammar checker on their email now? Well, Grammarly shapes the tone of your email, and we all kind of sound the same. So we do see this happening from a linguistic perspective, and I am not a linguist. I'm going to like preface this for any linguists that might be listening, but we already are seeing a very interesting shaping of the direction of language within society because of these machines.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in human history, there have been 4 ways we've managed wealth inequality: war, famine, disease, and violent revolution. None of those are that great. Do you think that AI could be a solution to that problem of wealth inequality, which is growing, or will it exacerbate the problem?
What a softball.
Okay,
So,
before
the-
anyone
Can I
else-
reiterate the question?
Yeah.
It's about how to address wealth and inequality in human history. 4 different tools have been used: war, famine, violent revolution, and what was the 4th one?
Disease.
The
Disease.
disease.
It's a classic 4 horse.
So can
Yeah.
AI be the the voice of hope here? And, do-
I think we answered that. It was the people, right?
I mean, like, I really, 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 really want to be wrong. So please, someone prove me wrong. But you remember that analogy of the like magnifying glass?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are the ants in that situation. So I can't foresee it necessarily going any better than the other 4.
I don't know, it's like the
But-
internet access has been very useful.
It has been. Globalization through internet access and being able to access other cultures has been phenomenal that way. But when we look at who actually has access to the internet, we still see that wealth inequality, right? Because yeah. To answer the question, under capitalism, no. Under anything other system that we currently have in existence, also no. But that doesn't super help. So I'm really hoping I can be wrong.
From a banking perspective, people with thin credit, for those that's new immigrants to Canada, they don't have a lot of credit history. That if they use AI algorithm, they will naturally be declined for the mortgage. But because we know that, we maybe pull them out and just review them in person. So this way is actually helping. But in general, I think AI, there are pros and cons. I don't have a general answer for that, but there are definitely things that we can do.
That is much more positive than my answer was.
yeah. So.
But you don't. That's even better.
So when we're discussing things about the ethical AI and saying that we need people who are ethical, the idea of ethics changes.
Totally.
So
Yes.
besides that, right? It's like
Yes.
I think I'm pretty open-minded, right? It's like I want to help poor people, and it's like I'm open to transgender people being gay, women's rights, and what about someone who isn't? And who's designing something who's
people again.
yeah, like how do you, if you're saying something's ethically, they were looking for something that's ethically right, who decides what's ethically right? But so many people have a different opinion on what that right is.
And Graham touched on that slightly when it's just like, who's in positions of leadership?
Yeah.
Are they all thinking the exact same thing? Then we do not have a panel that can actually make that decision, because if everyone has the exact same thought, then there's not enough diversity of opinion to actually say, it's all about what's the general makeup of the people making decisions, and if it's all so for example, if it is all white women making this decision, that decision is going to be hella biased towards literally the needs and wants of that group of white women, and so if it's all a group that is more diverse and you actually have diversity across all of the different spectrums of diversity from racial, economic, gender, then we stand a better chance at developing but also who decides what's ethical is kind of a massive
It's democracy, right? This is why continuing to believe in democracy is important, right? this is why we shouldn't put power in the hands of
A
very
singular
few
person,
people,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We need to continue believing in democracy and continue fighting for it, because that is what will help and help defend our institutions against profit-based voting or things like that, because that is how we build our society. That's how we run our society.
And as individuals, like, we need to take responsibility for the things that we do and that we purchase and like the tools that we interact with. And so I do feel like we can put the responsibility on the company to provide that explainability.
I would just add on that. I think there needs to be a balance. We can reach out to as many as people we can, but what is our budget? And think about those tools that we saw, like the Google Woke AI. I'm sure they have done a lot of testing and a lot of diversity check, and then they overcorrected. So I find the biggest challenge is how to balance it. You can't just reach out to endless people because there are always different views. Yeah.
My question's like all tied into all of it, and I wanted to kind of think in something that we, actually have control of in terms of everything else feels more out of control. What can people wanting to go into the AI industry or those that are already there, what can we either research or ask the organizations that we want to work for to ensure, or at least get some kind of temperature check that they're approaching things from a responsible standpoint, so we want to work for them?
That's a great question.
That's a very good question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, let's say in organization right now, there is like a lot of titles and positions and teams called responsible AI, right? And AI risk. All these teams are actually created right now. But funny that Google lay off a responsible AI team, all of it, because it's not monetized very well. So yes, the organization, they are trying to build the teams that actually do the AI governance in the organization and try to make sure that the juniors and the engineers that are starting their career in AI, they understand this from day one, that they are responsible, accountable for everything they are developing AI. There are a lot of initiatives in this. At least in my organization, there is a lot of initiatives and a lot of teams are created for that, which is a good thing. But I think it also needs to be initiated earlier than this, even in school, right? Because right now, all of us are trying to encourage people, kids to learn coding, programming, and AI, right? So we need to inject this subject, how to be responsibly in AI.
So I see there are a lot of conformity assessments or ISO standards that are catching up. So those companies who go to the route of getting a certificate something, because based on my experience, the ISO standards is pretty comprehensive. They will check a company on every single thing. Like Lauren just said, just be aware that this is not just a checkbox. And for us, our company, when we try to get a new vendor set up, and what we do is, what is your responsible AI policy or framework? And how are you using it? Rather than just, oh, I have a responsible AI framework, but is your company actually using it? And can you prove to us? And what is your responsible AI report for the product that you're building? So actually ask those detailed questions rather than them providing it as a checkbox.
And just to kind of tie it up, we have a lot of really good local resources. Look at home, start here. So within Alberta, we have Amy, which the Alberta Machine Learning Institute, they accept they're doing exceptional work. We also have YYC Data for Good. We have a lot of really good organizations in the city that are already doing really good stuff here. So start at home, start with local community organizations, and education can start literally here while supporting small groups, right? So.
Yeah, thank you very much. So it's 5:31, so I'm just gonna ask my closing question. Despite all these challenges, or many of us have kids, many of us want to be hopeful to the future. Tomorrow is the first day of spring. It's Persian New Year, so congratulations to everyone who is celebrating. It's a new season, new hope. What gives you hope despite all these challenges, despite all that you hear, what gives you hope for an ethical future of AI?
What gives me hope is actually something set up like this. We sit down, we discuss, we communicated concerns, we communicated what actually is scary, how we mitigate this. All this stuff actually give me hope, right? Give me hope that we will have better future. And because actually now AI is moving very fast, discussion like this, communities like this, try to discuss and try to point, and also, as we all said, let's try to make sure it's not a checkbox, and also let's try to make it regulated and discuss it more, because the people will actually get there, and we will have the power voice to try to make it better, right? So that's actually give me hope.
Thank you.
Yeah, I use Copilot and other tools like that to code. It really lowers the barrier to a lot of people for building cool things, building new things. Does it always give you the best examples? No. Does it get it wrong? Yeah, but it lowers the barrier for building cool things in code. It's going to lower the barrier for building new things, for doing new creative tasks. We invented nukes. We're all still here. We had democracy. We haven't lost our democracy yet. It's just another tool, but it's a tool that we need to be careful how we use. So.
Okay, great.
To me, the hope is human intelligence, and I think now we're just at a stage of growth pain. And think about our car. When we first invented the car and the traffic rules are not there, the seatbelt, you don't have to apply your seatbelt, but people can always figure it out. And now that we talk about it, and our human intelligences are always adaptive, we can always find ways to solve it, and there are always good people in the world.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's more good people out there, or I would like to believe that that's true. For like a really micro example, like that I think about, and what I think a lot of people why they join our organization specifically, is like the incremental improvement that we can make with the environment by applying some of these technologies to like reduce emissions. That gets me really excited. Like if it's even like 1%, 2%, 3%, like that's like a huge impact on the planet. So those types of use cases and the health use cases, those get me really excited.
Okay, great.
I would say just like this next generation of folks who are coming up and who are so curious, and like specifically like my students, like the students that I see in our class every day, like they want to know more, and they're curious, and they want to play with this, and they all have this innate sense of like, well, I want this world to like still be here when I'm growing old. They still want to be able to participate in the society, and like there's definitely a lot of hope with them, and like just their curiosity and enthusiasm for sure.
Excellent. All right, thank you all very much. This was an excellent panel. We all learned a lot. Let's thank our panelists, Yukun, Keri, Lauren, Moamen, and Grant. And thanks to everyone who is joining us, who are joining us online. And yes, let's bring this to an end. Thank you all.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you.